welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is so deeply misunderstood, why standard planners completely fail neurodivergent brains. If you have an ADHD mind, you absolutely know the sheer exhaustion of trying to force yourself into neurotypical routines. So let's look at how to ditch those rigid methods and replace them with an operating system built for the way your mind actually works.
Look, we need to start with some radical validation right off the bat. So many adults spend years, sometimes decades, believing their struggles are just laziness, but hear this. Your executive functioning difficulties are neurological patterns. They are not moral failings. You aren't broken. You're just trying to run the wrong operating system on your specific hardware. And once we accept that, we can finally stop fighting our own nature.
Section 1. The ADHD Shame Spiral and the Broken Streak. Let's explore why traditional productivity advice always seems to blow up in our faces.
Okay, we literally all know this cycle, right? You buy that gorgeous new planner with the absolute best intentions. You think, I'm going to get my life together this time. But standard tools demand neurotypical consistency, and they don't teach you how to adapt when your energy suddenly crashes. They expect you to be the exact same person with the exact same capacity every single day. For an ADHD brain, that's just a recipe for disaster.
Take a look at this. The contrast between what neurotypical folks expect and what actually happens is just wild. Traditional advice says, well, just prioritize, plan ahead. But for us, reality is this painful, repetitive loop. It kicks off with intention, dips into delay and avoidance, accelerates into sheer panic, relies on a massive hyperfocus sprint to save the day at the very last second, and inevitably ends in total exhaustion and shame.
And here's the thing, when you miss 3 days in a normal planner because you're burned out, it triggers this devastating shame spiral. You feel like you failed the system. But honestly, the system failed you. You were completely unsupported in how you actually function because nobody gave you the education to use those tools flexibly. A blank page doesn't teach you how to forgive yourself when executive dysfunction hits.
Moving on to Section 2, Unmasking Temporal Myopia. Let's get into the actual neurological root of this endless cycle.
So the real culprit here is a glitch in your internal clock. Clinically, it's called temporal myopia, or time blindness. For an ADHD brain, the future is just vague. Long projects feel completely unreal. You literally do not have that internal emotional sensation of time passing until a deadline suddenly becomes a massive, screaming emergency right in your face.
If you try to tackle a huge, unstructured block of work, it's going to drain your segmenting battery incredibly fast. Time blindness makes that time horizon completely invisible. Your brain looks at a 3-hour open block and basically short circuits because it can't comprehend the start, the middle, and the end. Without structure, that vast expanse of time is just overwhelming, and boom, you're right back in paralysis mode.
Section 3. The 10-third dopamine wave. We know what the neurological problem is, so let's talk about the mechanical solution.
To bypass the paralysis, we use the 10-3 framework. It's super simple. You shrink your time horizon to just a 10-minute intense sprint, followed by a mandatory 3-minute screen-free break. That's it. You're no longer staring down a monolithic project. Your brain only sees a safe, short 10-minute sprint. It completely flips the script on how you approach work, because hey, 10 minutes is something any brain can tolerate. And listen, sustaining attention. It isn't about just trying harder. It's literally a mathematical equation of cognitive load and dopamine regulation. By artificially lowering the load, meaning, only working for 10 minutes at a time, and manufacturing dopamine with those 3-minute breaks, you're effectively hacking your brain's reward system. It makes focus totally sustainable.
The secret sauce here is activation energy. Action creates momentum. Momentum creates dopamine, and dopamine improves focus. Starting tiny and moving fast gives your ADHD brain that exact spark it desperately needs to keep going without burning out before lunch. It becomes this awesome compounding loop of positive reinforcement instead of just a miserable grind of willpower.
All right, Section 4. Navigating with 3 personas. Your energy isn't a constant speed, right? So let's look at how to adapt. This is exactly where the NovaHEART system comes in. It provides the tools, but more importantly, the education. It teaches you to operate under 3 distinct personas depending on your energy that day. You've got the system's architect for those average maintenance days, but it also gives you strategies for your extreme highs and lows. It treats your brain dynamically, not rigidly.
First up, the Dopamine Guider. When that dopamine hits and you feel totally invincible, this persona takes the wheel.
It helps you ride the wave and get so much more done, but without that toxic, forced hustle vibe. You capture your raw ideas, you run your 10-3 micro sprints, and you celebrate immediate victories to keep the reward loop firing before the inevitable crash. But on the flip side, when you wake up feeling completely overwhelmed, when that executive dysfunction is just paralyzing, the Sanctuary Guide steps in. Think of this as an arm around your shoulder. It reminds you that docking the ship for a tactical recovery break is absolutely vital. Pausing the shame spiral and resting isn't a failure, guys. It's literally a clinical requirement for our brains.
Section 5. The NovaHEART ecosystem. Let's wrap up by showing you where to actually find the support network.
NovaHEART literally replaces those boring, dense administrative hurdles with a high dopamine, action-oriented system that actually honors how you think. It's a whole ecosystem that merges physical planners with the psychological education you need to use them without guilt. Because let's be real, a tool is totally useless if you aren't trained on how to adapt it to yourself.
So where do you start? You can grab these tailored tools, like the digital planners and the physical kits, directly through the Shopify store. And honestly, do not skip joining the Facebook community. Having that judgment-free peer support and doing body-doubling sessions with others is often the exact external anchor you need to finally break through task paralysis and stick to your new systems.
So I want to leave you with this to chew on. Knowing that your executive dysfunction is entirely neurological and absolutely not a character flaw, what is the very first micro-step you're going to take today to architect a life that finally supports you? Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and remember, your brain isn't broken, it just needed a different manual.